we had a lot of stories coming into the weekend about tension that was being felt at Mamelodi Sundowns between the co-coaches. Obviously, after the victory at the weekend, one of those co-coaches came out to pour cool water on those rumors. But what do you make of it? Do you think with there's smoke, there's fire? I mean, one has to assume that when there's so many people kind of working together, you are going to get friction. You are going to get sometimes disagreements. But at the end of the day, if with all of that, they can still romp to a 2-0 victory against the Kaizer Chiefs, how well managed has that been? Calvin Sosibo, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think good evening to the viewers. We welcome them to our channel. I think one of the things that I have to point out with this tension that is going on at Sundowns, I think they show the level of maturity. I think personal issues should stay personal, and work issues should stay work issues. And I think in that way, they've managed to navigate forward and make sure that they iron those things out in the field, which was the business of the day, was completed very well. Outside, we don't know how much does the tension still goes on the closed doors. But what we saw on TV, we saw a matured leaders who were on the bench who marshaled the team into victory. And this is what we wanted supporters to see. Even though the media may give us the hints that there's still tension and whatnot, but I don't think a lot of people witnessed that in the game day, which is the result, a reflection of what happened.
No, for sure. I mean, they were still quite dominant, and almost, Greg, made it seem like Chiefs weren't there. I mean, Chiefs had a good performance, but as far as the defending is concerned, there'll be concerns there for Stuart Baxter, and just how they couldn't have that killer instinct in front of goal.
For me, I just feel like, Chiefs has a different Chiefs this season in terms of how they play going forward, with their attacking power. But my only disappointment is Stuart Baxter. We always know him in terms of set piece. Yeah, he's the master of set piece in terms of defensive and attacking. And for him to concede in set piece with the first goal, I mean, it's just unbelievable, And I think he's gonna be bringing them this morning and try to show them the tape and how they concede, because it's a standard situation, which I think Kaizer Chiefs could have done better, and you almost have to kind of scoring on the line, basically on the line of the back post. I mean, which you cannot allow Billiard to mark a center back like a massive center back like that. So I just think it's a big mistake, and the players try to shift responsibility. I don't know who's supposed to mark Kitana, because if you check the Sundowns team, I mean, there is not too many heights there, and the center back Kitana is one of the players that have height, and I think players like Sedokovic or Mato, we should pick the center back, which is a normal standard situation. And when they concede that goal, you always know they're gonna come out fighting, and that's where you give Sundowns opportunity to get the second goal. But nevertheless, Chiefs, they show some character, even missing the penalty, which if they scored that penalty with, I think it was if not 79 minutes of the game, I think it could have been a little bit tense, towards the end of the game. But missing that penalty, I think it was home and dry for Sundowns, to win that game.
Yeah, there we go. And joining us is Mr. Timothy Batabayer. Tim, to that point, welcome. Obviously, at the end of the game, you look at the stars on the side of Sundowns, but how important was Dennis Onyango in that victory? Because also, he made some crucial saves that I think earlier, would have changed the momentum. It's a bit difficult, maybe with 10 minutes left, but had that goal gone in that he saved, it could have changed things a lot earlier and put pressure on Sundowns a lot earlier. But it goes to show why he's one of the best on the continent.
Good evening to our listeners and good evening to everyone. The question that you're posing before me is quite, I don't want to compromise myself, but I have to be very professional because we're talking about Dennis Onyango. I think it's the difference between Kaizer Chiefs and Sundowns winning the game. That point save, Craig will tell us that it gave Sundowns the belief that they can win the game. It was a pinpoint save, and in that moment is the difference. And then when you talk about goalkeeping in Dennis Onyango, it brings back the question, why is Kaizer Chiefs struggling to find a number one choice as a goalkeeper? Because there are certain positions in football where you don't just think around with it. And that goes for your goalkeeper, it goes for your backline. That is always the core of the team. You don't, because there's an interlink between the goalkeeper, the central defenders, and right backs. So that communication is key. So Kaizer Chiefs, they have to make a decision whether they're going to make Kune their first choice goalkeeper so that he gets used to his backline, or Akpei or Vuma. You cannot tinker in those areas. But we saw glimpses of ball watching in their backline, which is not the kind of tactics you expect from Coach Baxter, as Craig has alluded to that. But back to Dennis Onyango, his presence gives confidence to his whole team that they can, play from the back. They will always have a second chance for the last man standing to prevent that goal from going into the net. And yesterday he proved that, and that gives them the momentum to go forward. So for me, yes, there is a great improvement in this team of Kaizer Chiefs, but Sundowns still believe they are strong contenders for the championship.
Okay, I want to bring Greg in because we're speaking goalkeepers here, Greg. Stuart Baxter came out and said that part of the reasoning for why he went with Bruce and Akpei on the bench was because they just come from international action. So as far as, being ready and being, in a game scenario, obviously that might help their sharpness. Do you go along with that? Does that make sense to you? Or do you use the fresher keeper who's been training with the squad and didn't travel with the national team? How would you have gone for that one? Does it compute as a goalkeeper that you stay behind and are fresher, but the ones who have been traveling got the spots in the team ahead of you?
Kabza, you have to look at it both ways. In terms of how the distance where they travel. In terms of the international game. But for them to be in the national team, I think they have one edge ahead of the other ones that's not in the national team. In terms of Zuma and in terms of Akpei, and at home, which they have been training. Yeah, but they know everything about the team because you need to build the team around them because they are the one at home. But if you go for international game, that's one thing that the national team or the country is seeing you. So you have the edge ahead of anyone that stayed behind. But depends on where they travel to. But I think it's not an excuse. But by now, I think it's the third game of the season. Excluding the MTN8 and other competition that Kaizer Chiefs have played. I think by now, Stuart Baxter should know who is his number one. You can call all of them number one, but you have in back of your mind that this. If he's not injured or if he's not lost of form, he's my number one, this is my number two, this is my number three, this is my number four. If apart from the injury, apart from loss of form, except the goalkeeper go in a drastic, lose drastic form, that's where you can say, okay, let me change and give the other goalkeeper a chance. But right now, I think with Stuart caliber and with his experience, I think you need to have a number one so that the back line, as a team alluded to, the back four will be comfortable and they know that this is our number one. If it's not there, this is number two, apart from injury. But I think by now, we should know in Kaizer Chiefs who is the number one.
I hear you. So let's talk about that because I'm guessing a lot of Kaizer Chiefs fans will look at the back four, Kelvin, and wonder why they're not seeing, more of the newer faces and, this far into the season, or maybe it's not, maybe it's still early days. I don't know. You can chime in here. But I mean, are we seeing a coach who doesn't know his best 11 and maybe seeing things in training that don't convince him that the new guys, are cut out, especially when we talk about that center back pairing for Kaizer Chiefs?
Yeah. We're seeing a glimpse of coach doesn't really know in terms of the first 11 that he needs to put on the field. I'm still surprised that why Ngobo hasn't been given a chance ahead of Dube. my personal feel, I would have started with Noble way too early because I mean, defend of the season that speaks for itself. I mean, having him and testing him with other players would have given us a picture in terms of how Chiefs are planning to move forward. But it seems as if he's still holding on to the guys that he knows, the Mato, the Cardoso that is left at Chiefs. So why refresh the squad if you're not going to use the players that you have bought? So in that,
Did he buy those players though? If we're fair, I mean, did he have a say? Do you think? I feel like those players will be on the way. You know, it's like he's got there and he's like, okay, I'm going to work with these guys. But clearly, there's a sense or a lack of trust, it would seem.
not in a lack of trust, because if you take up a team, you're not taking up an empty skeleton. He got in there, he knew those players that are there. So when he took on the contract, exactly, he should plan against that. I mean, for those players that are bought, it's players that he's been following. I mean, if he's a defender of the season, he's there. What else do you want to know? Because that speaks for itself. So I'm picturing a coach that still hasn't found a proper pairing at the back, but yet he's got it in front of him. The reason why he tried to gamble with the Dube in that position, for me, it was quite challenging to see him tinkering with the central pairing. Would you have kept the same maybe players that understand each other, Mato and Cardoso? Maybe we would have gotten something in terms of the telepathy and also the understanding. But finding a new player coming into the high intense game is Sundowns. Sundowns is already playing against those players because they know each and every player achieves their weaknesses and strong points. And how did they find the goal? Over the tallest player at the back, failing to defend, or the marking was poor. So if you're going to be marking zonally or you're going to be going man for man, the last pole is always left unattended to. And Sundowns do know that. If they play it a bit longer, you're losing the personality in terms of height, because once it goes far wide, it's one of the areas that are less monitored because you always think that the ball is going to land in front of us. So now I'm looking at a coach that still needs to reshuffle or trust more in the players that he's got on disposal. They can give him something, but I think them throwing them in batches, it might work, but I think at the back, that's where the problem was. In the middle, okay, we kind of settle. We got the Nange, we've got the Alexander Cole. So I think within that pairing, we're still fine. But where we're struggling most is actually the center pairing. And also on the left, we're still having some problems also. Having a look at Mabaliso, he gave in something. He was more confident on the ball. He lost less balls. He wasn't careless on his attacking. He maintained position, and he gave us something, even though he was thrown into a later dying minutes compared to the player that they started with.
Hey, okay, I hear you. So let's talk about like the confidence, Mr. Batabayer, because you have Ngobo, who's gone from playing week in, week out, being indispensable for the team that he came from. All of a sudden, he gets the dream move, thinking, okay, happy days are here again. We got a top coach who came here and did well with his team. I'm going to be coached by that guy. But then that guy doesn't, have any faith. And, we speak about Dube getting a start. Coach also thinks that he didn't do as well as probably he would have liked, but we're here now. So what is going through young Ngobo's mind? And do you think that the coach is approaching the betting in or the trial runs for his new signings, especially in defense, in the right way?
Look, my experience tells me that whenever you move to a club as a player, you should recognize that you're going to find the previous players who are already playing in that team. And I always advise those players, if they consult with me, that remember, there's a player who has already got the confidence of the coaches and the fans. So when you're going there, you should not expect to immediately fit into the team. Those are rare cases of players. So when that time of delay comes about, you should still remain very composed and very mature enough to wait patiently, even when it's frustrating, to wait for your chance. Because if you start becoming grumpy, it's gonna distract your focus, and by the time you are selected, you will not be able to prove a point. So you have got the likes of Mato, Cardoso, who have got that history in playing that position in those high build games. So when you come as a new novice coming from, the likes of Swallows, and when it comes to the statistics, you may not immediately fit in there. So you are always at a disadvantage. So the coaches will look at those statistics and they will always go with it and test it until such a time when you're given a chance. And once given a chance, you should grab it and never let it. So for me, there are still early times. He was playing at, if you are like at Morocco Swallows, some of these teams, they don't have the billing and the pressure that you have when you're playing for the likes of Pirates, Chiefs, and Sundowns. So when it comes to the selection of players in those hybrid games, those factors come into play. So for now, I have a feeling that they'll gradually get into the team. Yes, they conceded in my opinion, very soft goals. You shouldn't be conceding such goals. And I had the understanding that Baxter had got sort of his tactics right. Having Nokovic playing, through the left side and Kamabirit being the leading person, because all their center halves are right-footed. So rightly so, it was more comfortable to put the ball on the right and try to pick out the likes of Nukovic, knock it back, knock it to a dropping, Kamabirian. And as the game progressed, you could see that was a little bit working out. But again, they have not played as a unit. But I can assure you that most teams will suffer, going forward against this Chiefs team. But we're talking about this Sundowns team, where you have got the likes of Tembers Wani on the ball. He gives his teammates, a second or a minute to take a breather when he has got that ball. You've got the likes of Sorino. They are always finding those pockets between the defenders, splitting them up. So for me, that's not how they conceded. They conceded goals from dead ball situations, crosses, me, any central defender will be as good as right back or left back. Once you allow in those crosses with a poor positioning of central defenders, it means you have become a striker, unlike being a defender. So the striker is always facing the goal, so he has got an advantage against you. So for me, they will need to try and cut out that supply until they get it right.
Okay, I mean, I don't know. The number one for me is a bit confusing because Greg, he is voted by his peers as the best in the league, and still doesn't get a chance. Do you think it is just a case for him to be patient, or do you think there's something else at play? If the likes of Dube are getting a start ahead of you, and for all intents and purposes, can you argue that the two center backs that are in there are better than Noble, who's outside?
For me, Kaizer, now at this point now, you can't really make an argument for the two center backs that are playing now, because Kaizer Chiefs are losing in terms of their defensive, which is unfortunately. But with him signing to Kaizer Chiefs, I think if you go back for last season, Kaizer Chiefs, were banned not to sign immediately when they have that opportunity to sign players this season. They were in a rush to sign a lot of players. Not knowing they're going to be change of coaches or change of coach, and through it, I think the signing of Noble, he was already on the line, Clancy, was under Gavin Hunt. They were talking to a lot of players, and the players already, they're going to go to Kaizer Chiefs. You have the Gabardine situation that, later on, Basta said that, no, I'm not gonna play with this player because I feel like he's gonna suit my style. But I think with the center back situation for now, I think you need to get a chance because the season is early now. You better make a mistake, better playing for him to make a mistake and for you to know where you stand with your depth in the team. Because right now, Kaizer Chiefs doesn't look like they have depth in the center back position or in the left back or in the right back because you haven't tested a lot of players, a lot of signings with the best defenders of the season. For him to be a best defender of the season, I mean, there's something important about the player. There's something good about the player, and there's something good that he has done for him to be the best defender. You can't just wake up and give him best defender, And I think at this point now, he deserves a chance. But when is the chance coming? I don't know when Basta is going to give him a chance, but he must stay ready because as a professional, you sign in a team, you have to stay ready at training session. When you're at home, you need to stay ready because anytime you will be called upon, because everyone is rooting for him to play now. So everyone wants to see the good of him. So when his time comes, he needs to show everyone. You don't need to disappoint anybody. But I know he's a very good player. He's comfortable with the ball. The one good thing about him, he just don't kick the ball. He always likes to play from the back, and which right now is not the strength of Kaizer Chiefs centre back.
Okay, we're going to carry on with the chat. I just want to do a quick roll call and say big ups to everybody who's tuned in. Eric Edits, what's up? Vusi Makamu says, as a Kosi fan, I personally feel happy losing the game playing like we played yesterday. I'm not sure if that's going to be because it forces the coach into making a decision and changing up his team. Good evening to Nomon Dondolo joining us as well. And we've got also Somila Landu joining us. Lulama is in the discussion. So thank you to everybody who's joining. We're going to pick up on some of your points in a moment. But, a point being made, Kelvin, that Cardozo and Madoho didn't work last year. So as a coach coming into the team, maybe he would have looked at those games and maybe looked at Ngobo as well. So, for a lot of people who are thinking, okay, but it's not like these guys only became bad now or not as good as we'd like them to be or the quality for a Kaizer Chiefs team. So the delay, it's like, you see Varane, he got bought. He's playing. Yep. You got the best defender from last season ahead of teams like Pirates, Sundowns, Chiefs, and he can't get a look in. So, I mean, patience is one thing, but, being practical, maybe that doesn't make sense. I mean, you've got literally an elite center back on the bench, but you're okay with losing 2-0.
True, yes, same point. As I said, being a defender of the season means something. The guy has been included also in the national team ahead of Cardoso and Mato. Still, you're on the bench, even though he hasn't been given a chance for the national team. But again, it says a lot. Given the few minutes that he played, you could tell that a player is a multifunctional player because he played more as a holding midfielder when you got him. So what does it say? Again, you can always try and gamble and play him a little bit upper, so then he can be a screener for the two at the back, which is to protect Matoho and Cardoso. So in that sense, it gives you a variety if you want to try and push him up because he's more technically gifted. He's got good technique, good vision, can pass the ball and reads the game very well. So put him in a more advanced position if you don't want to risk at the back because you trust those two because maybe you have worked with them before. But this one, maybe you're just not too confident on him to play him. But when given a chance, he got in those few minutes that he was given a run, and then he delivered. And everybody could see that this is the player that we kept on the bench and was a player of the season. He's given us something in the middle. Even though we still have your Cole Alexander, we still have your Nange, it still showed that the guy is high quality. So why don't we give him a chance also to prove himself? Ahead of Dube, I will play Ngobo on that position. I hear Greg saying Chiefs is not a team that wants to start at the back, but if you're a team that plays on transition, you cannot just get the ball and kick it up. So what you do is you start building up from the back and the team will press you. Once they press, this is when now you're going to have an allowance of your Nokovic running into spaces. You have the Billiards running into spaces. You have players coming short to receive. You see the activation of the Nanges, the Cole Alexander, interchanging of passes, overloading one side to free the other side so then they can attack in both ways. But if you are playing in a transition football and then you are failing to start at the back, which team are you going to catch on transition? Because as I said, that those three gentlemen understand Stuart Baxter. And one thing that we have to really understand is that it's not the same quality of players that Stuart Baxter had to exercise this transition football. Now he needs to rebuild a team that has to understand because technically and tactically, they are not as sound as the team that he coached before he left.
Okay, well, there we go. There's also the interesting use, Greg, of Samir Nukovic. Not as central as he probably would have liked, but, some looking at that as a tactic and giving Stuart Baxter, a bit of praise from putting him out there on the flank and having Kama play a bit more centrally. What did you make of that experiment? And, obviously looking at the result, you'd say it didn't work because it couldn't get on the score sheet. But do you think maybe there's some promise, there's some potential in utilizing him like that? Or do you think he's better suited down the middle?
For me, I think it's better suited down in the middle because, when you play against Sundowns, if you have the likes of the Rook and Kekana playing centre back, I think, you're going to put your money on Nokovic in terms of, try to bully them down the line in the centre back, try to play off his back. He can play, Billet can play off him because you put him on the side. I think with Sundowns, the way they play, it's hard for you to get the ball. So he's not going to be useful, and he's not a player that we chase a left back or a right back, to try to win the ball back. So I think it's more suited, in terms of playing as a central striker, in terms of the team they're playing at the weekend, which was Sundowns. So I just feel like he was actually frustrated during the game, because Jali was basically, put him in his pocket because Jali was, trying to, play on his mind, and which he fall into the trap, and when Nokovic gets angry in a game like that, you're not going to see him play again, and you need his strength in terms of the area ball, the set piece. There's one good chance he missed, I think in the first half, but I just think that is his strength, and if you take him out of that, danger zone, because, you have that, the 18-yard box, that's where you need Nokovic to be around, with his height, with his strength, with his power, that's where he can cause more havoc. When taking him out of that, in that kitchen, as we always, we have one of our colleagues always say that the kitchen is that's where it's very hot for you to, make sure you score goals. So for him to go away from the kitchen, I just feel like, he's not useful. And the way Chiefs were playing that day, the crosses, Sundowns, they read them very well. They closed Clancy, and they didn't allow Clancy, because Clancy basically is the only one that can put quality crosses. He had 2 in the first half, and that was all, that was all. There was no ball coming into Sundowns box often, So I think Nokovic on that day, I think, they could have been substituted earlier, because he was not effective in that game, because I think Jali did very good job on him that day.
Okay, well, there you go. An interesting perspective there from Greg Etafia. Joining us now, we've got one of you who follow us so closely, in Siyabonga Khumalo, who joins us on our Zoom meeting to discuss Kaizer Chiefs. Welcome, Sia. Thanks for joining us. What do you make of your team? What do you make of your team so far this season?
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you. It's I don't know. Personally, I think the coach has got something against the defender of the season. He was actually supposed to automatically be in that starting 11. I think when he writes his team sheet, the Fungobo needs to be there. So, and it's just bad. I don't understand.
What do you think is happening? Why am like? Do you think
as Calvin said, maybe he sees something different than Jimmy that we don't know? Because of it's sad to keep losing like that when you have a top quality defender who apparently he's saying that he's slowly trying to make him fit in the Kaizer Chiefs. I truly don't understand that. And also not having a number 1 goalkeeper is also a problem, because we keep changing goalkeepers every week. And that's my 2 cents.
Who's your number 1 in your mind? Who should be your number 1 keeper at Chiefs?
I think Akbe. I think Akbe should be the number 1 keeper. My number 2, or give it to Peterson. Kune. I'm just not sure anymore about Kune.
You think he was a transition to becoming a club ambassador? Do you think his best days are behind him? Why are you laughing, Kelvin? That's a real job.
The new role now. He must just consider being a club ambassador and just help the boys.
Tim, what do you think?
Majority as people come.
Look, it's very interesting. In my opinion, I beg to differ from anyone, but Kune is still the number one Kaizer Chiefs goalkeeper, and then you have, in my opinion, and, when Kune or Akpe are in goal, the body language of the defenders and the whole team changes. Absolute belief and confidence from the body language of the players. That will go a long way in getting Kaizer Chiefs to play the way they are playing. For example, the first goal, we can talk about defenders, but I can guarantee you that was a ball high up and it was landing almost on the six in the box, in the 18-yard box.
Yeah.
An experienced goalkeeper in the likes of Kune Akpe, they would have come to correct that ball. It wasn't. And they conceded on the near post. Craig is a goalkeeper coach. He'll be able to tell us about that. If that header went on the far post, I will understand. But you cannot concede on the near post and you're blaming a defender. It is far-fetched. The fact of the matter, the opponent that Kekana headed the ball ahead of the defender does not make the defender to have positioned himself poorly. So much goes into that. We are looking at the crosses. All those things come into play. So the defender, yes, he was in the wrong position because he was ball watching. The moment, that's a dead ball situation. You should position yourself on the D and attack the ball. You should not be found back pedaling to head the ball.
Sorry to come in there. Sorry, I think it wasn't, if I can remember very well, I think it was Villiers, if I'm not mistaken. I stand to be corrected. I think if it was Villiers, on the far post there, and Kekana is the one. Just as I said earlier on, it's either Nokovic or Kadosu or Motou. One of the centre backs could have been, could have marked Kekana.
It was Dube was marking him, Greg. It was Dube marking Kekana.
Yeah. So I mean, okay, Dube just come into the team. I don't know whether he's one of the best header in the team, but I'm saying if you have Nokovic there, if you have Motu or Kadosu, I think one of them, should have taken responsibility. In terms of Kekana coming all the way, Nokovic must be there with him because Nokovic is a striker and a centre back. Normally, that's what happened in the game. So I think Nokovic should have been.
For me, Craig, for me, it's quite basic because if you look at the Kaizer Chiefs team, you have got very able-bodied players that are tall and huge. So when it comes to a dead ball situation like that, I don't expect the likes of Kamabiriat and Dube to be coming back. Or I expect Mama Kamabule, if he's going to come back, he's going to be on the D because there's no danger on such a far side. So for me, what is important is the lining up of the back line was poor. Because in such a situation, you need to get those big, the central defenders, the big boys, Nukovic, the likes of Mato, one to be in the center, one to be at the back, and one to be on the near post. Those are the dangerous areas that you have to challenge because when they bring in an in-swinger, an incoming player can head it. You need to cut that out. Then on the far post, when you put the likes of Nukovic on the far post, you give him the opportunity to come from the last position to attack the ball. Because at that moment, it was a dead ball situation. It was a dead ball situation that was moved and wiped in. So if they were able to move the ball and then they stop it and then they cross it, that reaction to prevent the cross is what lacked. And then at the end, at the back post, I think the positioning of the defender was poor. But again, less is said of the positioning of the goalkeeper.
Just to add in that, I think the most important detail that we should highlight here is when it's an outswinger, the positioning changes. It's either you mark zonally or you go for man for man. But the direction of play gives you an indication. We have seen before the Lebusa will always occupy the last pole if it's an outswinger. So therefore, if you will put bodies and taller players right at the far end, and you still cannot deal with the outswinger because an outswinger is no threat compared to an in-swinger because you are dealing with the first post attack. So therefore, if the understanding or the planning or the analyzation of Sundowns from Chiefs side. They should have picked up that this is what Sundowns have specialties on, because they will put on the Lila K for the in-swingers, or if it's on the out-swingers, they will always have bodies coming rushing into the box. It's difficult as defenders, Tim will attest. It's difficult to defend players that are already in motion attacking the goal. Then when you are set up in a position marking in a zonal space, so the pressing down and the closing down, it allows the keeper to clean up everything that will be a mess from there, because if it's an outswinger, they can always attack the ball. But when it's an in-swinger, it's difficult because it's a ball that is curling in. Outswinger gives you time to attack and clear.
Okay. I liked how you said it just now. You said attack. I preferred that. You were like, attack. I like that, Kelvin. Sia, very quickly before we let you go, around Ngoboge, if he's the first name on the team sheet, who are the other three in the back? Who's in front of him playing screener? Let's hear your ultimate 11 for Kaizer Chiefs.
So ultimate
Goalkeeper?
11.
Goalkeeper,
I'll give it to Akpe. I personally still think he still has it. I'll give my two center backs is Ngobo and Matoho. I explain why Matoho is there. Cardoso must go. Cardoso must just watch from the sidelines. Right back, I'll give it to Reef Floster. Bloom has been doing a good job, but I think I'll give Reef Floster the right back. Left back, I'll give it to Mabaliso. And then, so I don't understand the pairing for the pairing Yaga Cole Alexandra and Nange. I kind of
too similar for you.
Yeah, I kind of feel that they're similar. So I'll put in the young Ngobo there with one of the guys, one as a CDM, and then my two wingers. I'd have Upila as the top striker. Nokovic can go relax for now, and then I'll have Dolly on the right and Sukhot on the left.
Hectic. So no Nokovic in your starting 11.
Nah, no Nokovic is my starting. I think the type of play that we are playing now, because he's more on the side now. He's not central anymore. So he doesn't give us any options.
Interesting. Okay, Sia Kumalo, thank you so much for joining us. From a Kaizer Chiefs fan, let's hear what the
Thanks for having me, guys.
Sundowns fans, pleasure, brother, are saying in the comments. They've been very vocal. Let's see. Let me find a Sundawana here. The Yellow Nation is going for all 3 titles this season. I mean, we're one leg away from MTN final, and we have the legs for the league season, so they need to ride along with the champions, says Lulama Kalipa. And let's see. This is on Somila saying Vuma must improve his kicking skills as well. He turned over the ball a lot, inviting pressure. Let's see. Yeah, I know Cardozo and Matoho didn't work last year. What makes them feel it would work this year? We touched on that a little. And Tsepo Malusi says, I will say it again. Sundowns are yet to come off the blocks. They've had a proper preseason for the first time in a while. I think they're pacing themselves. They will get better. Yeah, that's what, Sundowns fans think. Just on the way to winning the league. We'll get rid of it, Chiefs. We'll get rid of others on the way as we get stronger and stronger. And I guess what's also quite heartening for the team, Greg, is that, the guys that have come in, you have Kekana now, who with some game time is showing his value. Isn't this the worry that Chiefs fans will have, is that, you take so long to bet in the players and you actually might not even have an opportunity then for them to make mistakes early on. This is something that's been touched on throughout our conversation. Make mistakes early on, self-correct when it's still early, and then be critical and important at the later stages of the season.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, because you have defender of the season apart from the MTN 8, apart from the Carling tournament, and we on the third game of the season. I think by now, defender of the season should be playing. As you touched earlier on, when you buy a player or buy a center back from Europe, I mean, after 2-3 games, you need to get in. Because you cannot just buy a player and put him on the bench, which is the best player of the season, of the past season, and you put him on the bench. I think he deserves a chance, as everyone. You better see what he got now, early stage, and to correct it than, to put him later on. I think, for now. He is suited in the back three, because sometimes Kaizer Chiefs play the back three, and he can be the ball player, you know. And as Kevin said earlier on, he can play the ball with the transition system Kaizer Chiefs needs to are playing. He can be the one bringing the ball out from the back. So I think, you know, he's very confident. He's a good player. I think for me, with the situation with the center back at this moment, I think he deserves a chance to play.
I mean, Tim, lastly on this one before we move on, some of the fans have a bit of, I guess, what you'd call buyer's remorse in the coach. They think that maybe Arthur Zwane should have carried on and, you know, would have done a better job, had an understanding of the players and, you know, was closer to them, having obviously spent more time with them. Do you think that's early sensationalism? Do you think people are panicking when they shouldn't be, and that Baxter was always going to be light years ahead as far as a improvement is on Shepi and Zwane?
They need to forget about the armchair coaches. they were always
Who are the amateur coaches?
They should forget about armchair coaches.
Oh, armchair. Oh, my bad. Armchair. Got it.
So what's going to happen is the fans will always come up with their lineups and opinions. That's going to inform, you know, the opinion of fans whenever the results are not forthcoming. And when they win, they will clap. So there has to be focus. If you go into detail of the game, you could realize that Kaizer Chiefs had more forward entries actually and more chances. Chances just didn't go in. That's why we are talking about something that is different at this moment in time. So they had some good chances, well-created chances. Onyango did make some good saves that made the game look different. So going forward, they are not looking so bad. We have had a discussion whether they should play which defender and everything like that. For me, I'm interested in how Kaizer Chiefs played on the day, given the players that were put on the field of play. So for me, I'm looking at the, you know, what can be improved in those areas. I strongly believe that we have got the likes of Cardoso and Matoho, almost similar players. So and they are trying to get Cardoso to try to be the calmer player to try and play from the back. So if you have got the likes of Ngoba as you are discussing, I think that would be a better pairing going forward. So he may have some butterflies, you know, on starting out, but once he gets that confidence and accepted by his fellow teammates, I think it will be a great pairing going forward. And then you'll have the likes of, you know, Matoho and the Cardoso alternating amongst themselves, because the season is very long. But going forward, I truly believe that Kaizer Chiefs has got a better squad. We are talking about why can they play the young players and everything like that. The reason why Coach Gavin Hunt lost the job was because he was playing young players and they couldn't get the results. Baxter knows very well that he has got a job, he has got to deliver. So for me, losing to Sundowns is not a train smash. Why? Because they are the champions, they are the defending champions. But you gauge yourself how far you have come to compete with the likes of Sundowns if you're going to compete for the championship. I think they are not very far. As the season goes on and Sundowns is going to be competing on all fronts, I think Kaizer Chiefs, the likes of Kaizer Chiefs Pirates will get stronger and they will give Sundowns a run for their money.
Oksalayo, Tim Victor Makhaela says, Arthur Zwane, please. Let's see. Maybe, you know, sometimes be careful what you wish for in these scenarios.
Zwane is learning from the base. He's
been learning. Give him a chance, guys.
He must go have a chance somewhere else, is what people seem to be saying.
We have been there. We have been there when people clamor for somebody to be given a chance. We have been there. And I can guarantee you that when that job was advertised, I don't think Arthur Zwane did apply. He did not apply. So he was a little bit confident that he can learn under the tutelage of the likes of Baxter. So for me, I'm against the calling, why is Craig not being given the job? Why Arthur Zwane is not being given the job? The question is, did he apply for the job? If the answer is no, then he should wait.
And if there was no application?
Then you don't call for anybody to go there, because if your name was not raised, then there has to be names on the table. And from those from those names we make the selection.
So you must go take it up with the chairman, is what Timothy Bayer is saying.
His representative must tell us exactly if he did apply for the job.
Okay, okay. Others, one is representative. If you're watching, drop a comment on YouTube. Let us know. Did he apply? Did he have a whole presentation with slides and an idea and a philosophy? Okay, well, congratulations to Mamelodi Sundowns, Peter Shalulile and Grant Kekana getting on the score sheet there to make it 3 points. And one of the best performances I've seen from Dennis Onyango coming in and just, showing his class in that game. Let's keep it moving.